In this animation, we'll delve into the fascinating evolution of the USS Enterprise, tracing its lineage from the pioneering Enterprise CVX-330 to the futuristic Enterprise J. This comprehensive video covers every significant iteration of this iconic starship, now updated to feature the latest Enterprise F, G, and J. Join us as we explore the rich history, advancements, and legacy of the Enterprise across the generations. The USS Enterprise XCV-330 was the first spacecraft designated as a starship named Enterprise, though it belonged to the pre-Federation era. Originally constructed by the United Earth Space Probe Agency in the mid to late 21st century, it began its journey as a starliner, a manned interstellar probe, marking one of Earth's earliest endeavors into interstellar travel. Out of its class, it was the sole vessel to successfully reach Alpha Centauri. Others were surpassed by newer faster-than-light spacecraft. The XCVs, known as experimental coleopteric vehicles, were phased out in the mid-2120s in favor of starships utilizing Henry Archer's Warp-5 engine. This particular vessel measured approximately 300 meters or 980 feet in length and can accommodate a crew of 100 and up to 850 passengers. Despite its eventual retirement, the legacy of the XCV-330 Enterprise endures as a significant chapter in humanity's pioneering ventures into space. It also has an advanced second-generation warp drive and was the first ship to be equipped with a subspace radio. The NX-class Enterprise NX-01 was a United Earth Starfleet, which launched in 2151 under the command of Captain Jonathan Archer. This ship was an important vessel in Earth's history since it was the starship to be fitted with a Warp-5 engine. The NX-01 Enterprise was the prototype for a new class of starship. It was a smaller and less advanced vessel than the later Enterprise ships, but it was equipped with a variety of new technologies for its time, including advanced propulsion and powerful weapons systems. Early Earth ships were capable only of speeds in the region of Warp 2. At this speed, a journey between nearby stars could still take several years. However, at Warp 5, those same journeys would take only a few weeks, so the development of the Warp 5 engine was a huge priority. The most significant work on the Warp's engine was done by Henry Archer. His son, Jonathan, a noted test pilot who had been the first man to break the Warp 2 barrier, was assigned as Enterprise NX-01's captain. The ship remained under his command throughout her operational lifespan, and her crew made first contact with dozens of intelligent species and famously laid the groundwork for the foundation of the United Federation of Planets in 2161. Miraculously, she survived her mission intact and became a museum ship. The ship has a total length of 225 meters or 738 feet, has a total of 7 decks, can accommodate about 83 crew members, and has a maximum warp speed of 5.06. The NX-01 refit is similar in size and design to the NX-01, with the most noticeable difference being the addition of a secondary hull, resembling what would eventually be seen in the Constitution class. This refit was intended to represent the eventual evolution of this Warp 5 ship design. The next Starship Enterprise was a Constitution-class vessel that was launched in 2245 under the command of Captain Robert April, who completed a 5-year mission of deep space exploration. This enterprise, the NCC-1701, was then commanded by 2 of Starfleet's best-known captains. Christopher Pike assumed command in 2250 and completed 2 5-year missions that are among the most famous in Federation history. During his command, Pike was joined by the first Vulcan to serve in Starfleet since the foundation of the Federation. At the end of Pike's first mission, the ship underwent a major refit that saw the crew complement increase from 203 to 430. After 11 years in command, Pike was promoted to fleet captain, and command passed to James T. Kirk, who became one of the most admired captains in Starfleet history. The USS Enterprise, NCC-1701, was launched in 2245. She was fitted with a antimatter warp engine that gave her a regular cruising speed of Warp 6, and could maintain speeds of Warp 8 and above for limited periods of time. The warp engines were the ship's primary power supply, with the impulse engines offering a backup, but if they failed, the ship could survive on battery power for approximately a week. At sublight speeds, the vessel used conventional impulse engines. The main engines relied on dilithium crystals to focus the warp reaction, and since at this point in history, they could not be grown or recrystallized inside the ship. As was standard practice for most Starfleet vessels, the ship's design was divided into three distinct areas: a saucer section that contained the main bridge, most of the crew quarters, and the impulse engines. The engineering hall contained the warp drive systems, the shuttlecraft hangar deck, the main navigational deflector, and finally the twin nacelles that generated the warp field. Although the ship's primary mission has always been peaceful exploration, voyages into deep space are extremely dangerous, so the NCC-1701 was fitted with state-of-the-art weaponry. Photon torpedoes with a range of 750,000 kilometers could be fired from the underside of the saucer, which also housed massive phaser banks. The ship's computers used Richard Daystrom's revolutionary duotronic circuitry, and the ship's hull was fitted with powerful sensor arrays that provided data to the science labs. The original Enterprise has a total length of 289 meters or 947 feet, has a total of 23 decks, can accommodate about 203 crew members, and has a maximum warp speed of warp 8.4. Since Enterprise's mission involved extensive periods away from Federation space, she was almost completely self-sufficient. In 2269, the Enterprise returned to Earth and underwent a major refit under the command of Captain Willard Decker. Kirk resumed command in 2271 to deal with the Vega crisis, a mission during which Decker was lost in action. After this, the Enterprise refit became Kirk's flagship, and was engaged in further deep space missions before she was assigned to Starfleet Academy as a training vessel under the command of Captain Spock. The refit was the most extensive the Enterprise underwent during her lifetime, and involved an almost complete rebuild of the ship. This level of refit had always been part of the mission plan for Constitution-class ships, and the Enterprise was just one of several in the class that underwent the procedure, which greatly extended their potential operational life. The warp engine was upgraded to serve for another 15 years. Even though the structural frame of the ship was on their predecessors was retained, the hull plating was completely renewed. The Enterprise A was virtually identical to the refit Enterprise, but was destroyed months prior to its launch. Most of the changes were made on the bridge, and at least 3 different designs were used during the ship's service. The engine systems were given a major upgrade, with the matter-antimatter reactor being completely replaced, and the horizontal warp drive system being enhanced with a vertical warp core that almost ran the height of the ship. This arrangement would become standard on later Starfleet vessels. The warp engine upgrade to the refit Constitution-class ships was a significant improvement. The impulse engines were replaced with entirely new models. The phasers were rerouted through the engines to boost their power, though this had the side effect of knocking them out in the event of a main engine failure. In fact, a considerable number of airlocks and docking ports were added to the ship, and they could now be found on the side of the engineering hull, on the torpedo bay, and on the top and underside of the saucer section. The Broussard ram scoop, warp nacelles, and pylons were replaced with newer, more efficient designs that improved the ship's top speed. These slightly larger nacelles increased the Enterprise's length from 289 meters to 305 meters. Significant changes were also made to the saucer section. The overall size was increased to accommodate extra facilities, and a new bridge module was installed, which now included an auxiliary airlock where shuttles could dock. The ship measured 305 meters or 1,000 feet in length, has a total of 21 decks, can accommodate about 504 crew members, and had a maximum warp speed of warp 8.7. The refit Enterprise was seriously damaged when the Genesis device was detonated in the Mutara Nebula and was subsequently destroyed in orbit around the Genesis planet. Even though the refit and Enterprise A were virtually identical in appearance with a few subtle differences, the Enterprise A was another Constitution-class ship with a similar design, the USS Yorktown, which was recommissioned as the Enterprise A in 2286, and eventually retired from service in 2293. The bridge was in its customary location on Deck 1, and at least 3 different designs were used during the ship's service. The officers had a private dining hall in the saucer section, which was often used to entertain guests. Officers had crew quarters similar to those on the previous Enterprise. The brig was located in the bowels of the engineering hull, and it was designed to be escape-proof. The Enterprise A had a vertical warp core similar to that of the Galaxy class of 80 years later. The core could be accessed through main engineering on Deck 15. Similar to the Refit, the ship was measured at 305 meters or 1,000 feet in length, had a total of 21 decks, can accommodate about 504 crew members, and had a maximum warp speed of warp 8.7. The Excelsior-class ships have played a significant role in the Star Trek universe, and have been involved in a number of important events and missions. The ships were larger and more heavily armed than the Constitution-class ships, and they are often considered the successor to the Constitution-class design. It was commanded by Captain John Harriman, and it played a less prominent role in the Star Trek franchise than the Enterprise A. The USS Enterprise B was an Excelsior-class ship that was built at Starfleet's Antares shipyards. She was formally commissioned in Earth Space Dock in 2293. Work on the Enterprise B began in 2288 as part of Starfleet's project to replace the aging Constitution-class ships with larger and faster vessels. During the mission to Pluto, the Enterprise B was badly damaged and only left Space Dock several months later, this time under Captain William George. Even though the secondary hull was designed with plenty of space allocated for cargo, the ship was also designed as a heavily armed vessel for combat as much as exploration. The Excelsior-class ships have a distinctive flattened secondary hull with a bulge in the midsection, which is connected by a larger neck to the primary hull. The Excelsior class was one of the Federation's most successful starship designs. The fundamental engineering principles behind this class of ship drew heavily on the innovations developed by Captain Montgomery Scott during his revolutionary work on the upgrade of the Constitution class. The last report Starfleet received indicated that the crew had contracted a dangerous infection, but exactly what happened after the ship's final transmission was unknown, presumed destroyed, in 2329. The ship measures 467 meters or 1,532 feet in length, features 32 decks, and can accommodate approximately 600 to 750 personnel. It has a maximum warp speed of 9.2. The next Enterprise was an Ambassador-class ship that was launched in 2332 under the command of Captain Rachel Garrett. The Enterprise C has managed to have a similar design language as the Enterprise A, while being a perfect transition between the Excelsior and the Galaxy-class ships that came before and after. Just like its predecessor, it has 2 separate hulls, a primary and secondary with interconnecting dorsal. During the battle with the Romulans, the Enterprise C took more than 400 casualties and lost her entire senior staff apart from Captain Garrett. At the decisive moment in the battle, a photon torpedo created a rift in spacetime, and the Enterprise was thrown 22 years into the future. In 2344, the Enterprise C was destroyed, while responding to a distress call from the Klingon outpost on Narendra III, which was under attack by 4 warbirds. The loss of the Enterprise played a vital role in establishing peace between the Federation and the Klingon Empire, since the Klingons greatly admired the crew's willingness to sacrifice their ship in an effort to save a small number of Klingons. The Ambassador class has a total length of 526 meters or 1,726 feet, a total of 36 decks, and can accommodate about 503 personnel with a maximum warp speed of warp 9. Starfleet took the decision to reserve the name Enterprise for one of the Galaxy-class ships. Work on the Enterprise NCC 1701D, the third Galaxy-class ship, began in 2350. Similar to the Starfleet older vessel's design, the ship had a large, oval saucer-shaped primary hull, connected with a thick neck to the engineering hull, with a pair of elongated warp nacelles mounted on either side. The Enterprise D also featured a number of new design elements, including advanced deflector shields, a holodeck, and a highly advanced computer system with newly developed isolinear circuitry that replaced aging duotronic systems. Commanded by Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the Enterprise D was launched in 2363 and served for just 8 years as the flagship of Starfleet, before she was destroyed during an operation to prevent the destruction of the Viridian system in 2371. Despite her brief operational life, the Enterprise D had an extremely eventful existence, and made more of an impact on the history books than any Starfleet vessel since Captain Kirk's Enterprise more than a century earlier. The Enterprise D was the first Enterprise to carry a civilian population, which included the families of Starfleet personnel. All non-essential personnel could be evacuated to the saucer section, which could then detach from the engineering hull and retreat to safety under its own impulse power. Meanwhile, the remaining engineering section, which was capable of flight and optimized for combat, could engage the threat. Amenities included individual plush rooms for personnel, a bar and restaurant called 10 Forward, a theater, a salon, a repamat, a gymnasium, and even classrooms for the children. Best of all were the 16 holodecks that created fully immersive computer-generated worlds. The Enterprise D was built at the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards in the orbit of Mars, and was launched in 2363. She was a Galaxy-class starship, the largest and most advanced vessel that Starfleet made at that time. She retained the same basic layout as the earlier Enterprises, with a saucer section and an engineering hull that had 2 warp nacelles attached by 2 pylons. The ship has a total length of 641 meters or 2,103 feet, a total of 42 decks, can accommodate about 1,014 personnel and about 6,000 in an emergency, and had a maximum warp speed of warp 9.6. In the third and final season of Picard, Geordi took it upon himself to completely restore the Enterprise D for Starfleet. The Enterprise D was a Sovereign-class starship, which was an even more advanced class of vessel than the Galaxy class. It had a long, slender primary hull connected directly to the engineering hull, with a pair of elongated warp nacelles mounted on either side. The starship Enterprise E was a Sovereign-class vessel that was launched from Earth's San Francisco yards in the year 2372. The decision was taken to christen the Enterprise E following the destruction of her predecessor, the Enterprise D, in 2371. The ship ended in 2379 and underwent a major refit that saw Captain Picard taking on a new generation of officers, as many of her senior staff moved on to other positions following the loss of the Galaxy-class Enterprise D in 2371. Starfleet opted to make the next Enterprise a Sovereign-class ship, and gave the name to a vessel that was already nearing completion. Following Starfleet's initial encounters with the Borg, it recognized the need for a heavily armed, more compact ship that could withstand attack from superior Borg vessels. The Enterprise E, which entered service in 2372, was a smaller, faster vessel than her predecessor. Unlike the Galaxy class, there was no provision for families and she had a smaller crew. Despite her heavy armaments, the Enterprise E was still principally a research and exploration vessel, with a full complement of science labs and the appropriate mission specialist. However, because of the period in which she operated, the Enterprise spent a significant amount of time involved in military operations. She used the latest weapons throughout her career, including quantum torpedoes and randomly modulated phasers, both of which had been developed to fight the Borg. During one of these refits, the ship's interior was given a new configuration, increasing the number of decks to 29. The ship's more compact shape made her a more powerful ship in combat, but still followed the basic layout favored by Starfleet for over 200 years. The saucer had been elongated to become an oval, but was still a distinct section that contained the crew quarters and the majority of the science labs, while the secondary hull contained engineering systems. The most significant weapons upgrade involved the torpedoes. In addition to her complement of photon torpedoes, the Enterprise carried the latest quantum torpedoes, which could be fired at warp speed and had a far greater yield than their predecessors. In addition, the ship's computer core used the latest bioneural circuitry, a synthetic cells to process data faster than traditional isolinear optical circuitry. While the Sovereign class was refitted, it was more of a minor upgrade that didn't change much visually. Worf was promoted to captain of the Enterprise E in 2381 after Picard became admiral. The Sovereign class was longer than the Galaxy class but was smaller in terms of habitable volume. It measured a total length of 685 meters or 2,247 feet, had a total of 24 decks, can accommodate about 1,500 personnel, and had a maximum warp speed of warp 9.985. The Enterprise F made its first appearance in the video game Star Trek Online. The ship's inclusion in Picard Season 3 will finally make it part of the Star Trek universe's main canon. It is depicted as a new, advanced version of the famous USS Enterprise from the Star Trek franchise and is designed for long-range exploration and diplomacy. The Enterprise F was under the command of Captain Viekel Shan. She is the successor to the USS Enterprise E and is the flagship of the Federation, which was launched in 2409. The USS Enterprise F was a 25th century Federation starship, initially an Odyssey-class star cruiser, and post-refit a Yorktown-class dreadnought in Starfleet service. The Odyssey-class used the same basic saucer and hull nacelle arrangement common to most Starfleet capital ships. Like the Galaxy-class of nearly 60 years before, it was composed of two hull sections, an egg-shaped, domed primary hull, and a detachable secondary hull housing the main engines and warp drive. The Enterprise F measures approximately 1,028 meters or 3,373 feet in length and 371 meters or 1,217 feet in width. It can accommodate around 300 officers and 900 enlisted personnel and has a sustainable warp speed of 9.3. Temporarily refitted as a carrier vessel during periods of conflict, it met its fate during the attack on the Borg megasphere, where it was critically damaged. The events were heavily classified, and the ship was officially decommissioned in 2401. The USS Titan A, also known as the USS Enterprise G, is a Constitution III or Neo-Constitution class starship and served under Starfleet during the 24th and 25th centuries. Its predecessor, the USS Titan, was the ship that Captain William Riker commanded. Captain Liam Shaw commanded the USS Titan A when it was launched in 2396. In 2401, the Titan A played a crucial role in averting the Changeling and Borg threat that posed a danger to both Starfleet and the Federation. The Federation starship was outfitted with various elements from its predecessor, the Luna-class USS Titan. Notable components integrated into the Titan A included warp coils, the nacelle shield mechanism, and advanced computer systems. Over the course of 5 years, the vessel successfully accomplished 36 assignments. The Titan's unique refit was primarily influenced by the devastating assault on Mars. In the year 2402, a significant event took place where the Titan starship underwent a rechristening ceremony and was renamed the Enterprise G. This renaming was done as a tribute to the esteemed Jean-Luc Picard, as well as the renowned command crew of the USS Enterprise D. Notably, 7 of 9 assumed the role of captain, bringing her unique expertise and experience to lead the vessel. The G is a bit smaller than its predecessor and boasts a length of about 450 meters or 1,477 feet. The Titan is a mid-sized Starfleet vessel that houses a crew complement of 350 members and is equipped with 4 shuttlecrafts along with 1 Delta-class vessel. The ship showcases impressive speed capabilities, capable of reaching a maximum speed of warp 9.9. When it comes to armaments, the Titan is armed with 6 phaser arrays and 3 torpedo launchers, ensuring its firepower and defensive capabilities are formidable. She was due for decommissioning shortly afterward as key systems had become compromised during a mission known as the Monfet Gambit. And finally, the Enterprise J. The USS Enterprise J was a starship of the Federation in the 26th century, classified as a Universe-class temporal heavy dreadnought cruiser and versatile explorer serving in Starfleet during the 2550s and commanded by Dax. The ship is seen through a temporal projection, giving viewers a glimpse of Starfleet's technological evolution several centuries into the future. The Enterprise J is significantly larger than any previous Enterprise, reflecting advancements in technology and Starfleet's expanding scope of operations. It measured about 3,219 meters or 10,516 feet in length. However, specific details about its size are somewhat speculative, as the ship is primarily shown in a brief, somewhat ambiguous holographic form. The Enterprise J plays a role in the temporal Cold War, a significant storyline in Star Trek where different factions from various points in time attempt to alter history for their own purposes. Its design is sleek and streamlined, with a more advanced and futuristic aesthetic compared to earlier starships. Having modeled many versions of Starfleet's USS Enterprise, I've observed a noticeable decline in the quality of these ships recently. The original 1701 was meticulously designed akin to battle cruisers, with detailed schematics for every floor layout. With the Enterprise D model, each of the 42 floors was meticulously mapped out with extreme attention to detail and logical reasoning. However, over the years, there has been a notable decline in quality, particularly evident with the Enterprise G and F models. These versions lack detailed information about their interior layouts, leaving much to speculation. Sadly, as time has progressed, what you often see is merely an exterior shell of the ship, with little consideration for its functional design and layout. More than any other element created for the series, the Enterprise epitomized Star Trek. It was as integral a character as Mr. Spock himself. Like its human counterparts, it underwent changes in shape but never in name, and evolved in configuration while steadfast in its mission. From its inception to its eventual end, Matt Jefferies' starship has remained beloved by millions of fans. Star Trek distinguished itself as an exceptional series through its captivating character growth that deeply connected with viewers, alongside its meticulous crafting of a vibrant, intricate history spanning starships across multiple generations. That's just my take on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the evolution of the Enterprise and which version is your favorite. Drop your comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.